Yes, we'll stand our ground. We won't be pushed around. We must keep you from putting our kids in the ground, so we can't stand down. No, we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't stand down, brother. So we'll stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. 'Cause we know what's right. And we got plenty of fight. And if you think you're gonna keep pushing us around, well, you'll lose that crown. 'Cause we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. You know, it's pretty clear. If these lunatics think they have the right to strip us of our rights of self-defense, and if they're willing to do that, what else are they willing to do? We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. No, we won't back down. Back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground, so we won't back down. No, we won't back down. Virginians, you won't fight this fight alone.
I got an echo again. Hang on a second. Okay, is there still an echo? Yeah. Philip, go ahead and take it, because I'm echoing really bad.
Okay, so you should practice yodeling. So, well, hello everybody. Yeah, Pat's having some technical difficulties here. These virtual meetings can be tough, all this technology. But anyhow, we got an interesting lineup today of things that we're going to be talking about. There's always so much going on in this current world that we're all living in. So with us, we have Cam Edwards. Cam has got a wonderful history with the Second Amendment and stuff. And some of you saw the preview of his interview for this meeting with Pat, did a quickie interview, and I really recommend that you watch that. But first time I ran into Cam, he was doing the back when NRA had NRA TV. And I remember you sitting at a conference. It might have been in Philadelphia. I'm not sure, but I remember you had a nice big area there. You're interviewing people from the floor, and yeah, you were driving the show there for quite a while on the media back in the early days, if you will. NRA TV was they were sort of trying to pull something like this together a long time. When was it? Was that the early 2000s, right?
2004, yeah, is when NRA News started. And then I think 2018 was when we transitioned. Maybe 2017 was when we transitioned to NRA TV. Yeah. But thank you so much for the invite, Phil. It's so great to be here.
Yeah. I thought a lot of things that we could talk about, and one of the things that I've been dealing with quite a bit is apathy out there, and I suppose you've been seeing that also from people you talk to. I don't know exactly how we overcome that, because in Virginia we got elected. As you know, you live not too far from me. I mean, I guess maybe an hour in Farmville, the elections are rolling, and so we got to win.
Yeah, I mean, this is so critical. And I hope that the apathy that we are seeing in some places around the country is not going to be evident on election day here in Virginia. Because we know what happens when we turn out. We saw it in 2021, right? I mean, we have every statewide office right now. We took back the House of Delegates. In large part, I think because gun owners remembered what happened in 2019. And you look at the margins that we were able to run up, counties that typically would go 60-40 for Republicans were going 70-30, 75-25. We saw gains in almost every county across the country. Or excuse me, across the state.
My regret was that we weren't electing the Senate at the same time. I wish we could have moved this back to 2021, honestly.
I do too. We might be talking about the constitutional carry state of Virginia if we had Senate elections too, right?
Yes.
And maybe we could talk about the constitutional carry state of Virginia going forward because we do have the opportunity to take back both chambers to have a Republican governor. I get the sense that Youngkin might be reluctant to push constitutional carry, but I don't think he'd be reluctant to sign it.
Yeah. That would be a
but before we get there, we've got to turn out and vote. We've got to get every gun owner we know to cast that vote on election day or during the early voting period. Because Democrats, they're riding the abortion issue hard. We've got to stand up for our rights.
Yeah, they're trying to make the abortion the bigger issue, but they're also talking guns. I mean, they're out there pushing gun control. The gun control crowd isn't sitting quietly or trying to hide their agenda. They're out there. Of course, they call it gun safety. We know that. I wouldn't trust any of them to safely handle a gun. There's no way I would trust them to do that. They have no idea what they're doing. But they're definitely they've got a lot of money behind them. That's really what it is. I mean, you and I both know that they're really AstroTurf. There really aren't that many out there, but they're well funded and they show up and they can run these TV ads and try to get people to vote that. My experience is, though, those people that aren't gun owners that are kind of for gun control it's not a major vote for them, which is probably why they're also pushing the issues on abortion, trying to get that crowd riled up in some way or another to go vote.
I think that you're right about that. Particularly when you talk about the funding. I was talking with Tom Gresham today on Gun Talk, and we were talking about the new political action committee that National Shooting Sports Foundation is involved in. I don't know if I'm here anymore, but I'm going to keep talking. And we don't have our billionaires like Michael Bloomberg. We don't have those folks. And they do have the money advantage. But you're right, Phil. We've got the boots on the ground advantage, right? We've got the real grassroots activism advantage.
But we're the ones with our necks. We've got the skin in the game. If you're taking away somebody else's rights and it doesn't directly affect you, you don't have the same skin in the game as somebody whose rights are the ones that are being ripped away. Those people are going to be a lot more motivated to get out and do something than the people that are merely taking away. But the thinking is amazing. I was interviewed a few days ago, and in the interview, the guy was asking some questions of me of things that he had heard from the other side. And he says, "Well, the other side said something about the right to basically the right to live the way you want and so forth and so on, basically ripping it right out of the Declaration of Independence." And I said, you're all the rights listed in the Declaration of Independence, the basic, they did the very broad thing there. You don't lose those because somebody owns guns. I mean, they would make it sound like you don't have a right to happiness if your neighbor owns guns. And my response to that was, "Oh, that's ridiculous. The two are not." In fact, I said, I'm happy. I'm a gun owner and I'm happy. I've got all this stuff that the Declaration of Independence said we were shooting for when we broke away from England. And I said the people that would say something like that just don't like guns. And they want to get rid of them. They're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, their idea of gun safety is don't own a gun. Right. That's their definition.
And get rid of guns.
And I think it was Gavin Newsom who was talking about the other day. The right to live free from fear.
Yes.
You have the right not to be scared when you send your kid to school. All of this very emotional rhetoric.
Yeah.
The truth is, if we ever did lose our right to keep and bear arms, this country wouldn't be the safer place. It would be Mexico. Right? Mexico has very restrictive gun control laws. It's almost impossible to be a legal gun owner. And the cartel violence is out of control.
And we can say this stuff, Cam, but the others, the people that are thinking this are putting their fingers in their ears and going la 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 while we're saying it, because they either don't get it, they don't believe it, or they think somehow it won't apply in their case, that they can disarm everybody and we can all be in nirvana, and none of us will need guns anymore, and there won't be any bad people, or but it was interesting, but I think I made the point well in that interview that it's not mutually exclusive. You're starting with a false premise. If you start with a false premise, you can prove anything you want.
That's absolutely right. I thought I maybe. Oh, sorry about that, Pat. I guess not. It's still there.
No, you're good.
Microphones here just a second.
All right. No echoing, Pat. You good now?
Go ahead.
I was just saying, are you getting an echo?
Yeah, I'm echoing and Cam's echoing for some reason.
On the live feed?
Yeah, everybody's talking about it.
Huh. But I'm not echoing. It's usually me.
Oh, you know what? I might not be
echoing.
No, I'm echoing now too. Sorry. Thought I could change my audio and put it. Nope. Well, I apologies. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the rural internet tonight.
I think it may be because when I look at the microphone, it looks like it's coming through on Phillips as well. So if when Cam is speaking, if Philip,
Philip, it's you.
Okay, unless it's not,
something in your settings.
Okay.
Is your computer speaker
on? It's not going through the earphones when I came back in. Hold on. No. Okay. Nope. Say something. Let me see where it's coming through.
All right. How's that?
No. Okay. All right. I'll have to go out and come back in.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, he's the only one that's not echo.
So if he's the only one who's not echoing, means he's the problem, right? We've identified that.
Yes, the echo is gone.
And to Abel, you're right about the one gun store. I think that they're also allowed to purchase revolvers, one revolver up to 38 caliber. That so you can get your 22 rimfire rifle and or a 38 caliber revolver. But of course, again, you have to all of that subject to being approved by the local police. And depending on where you live, that may be a possibility. That may not be a possibility. It's New York, it's Massachusetts, it's California on steroids.
All right, we're back with no echo. Yay!
Hey.
I love it when a plan comes together. So Chris is asking, which state is this? You were talking about Mexico, I think, right?
Yeah. Not the United States yet. I think every state in the union has at least two gun stores, unlike the entire nation of Mexico, which only has one. But again, they would love for the United States to have Mexican style gun laws, and in fact, the Mexican government is suing the firearms industry in federal court here in the United States, trying to impose, these same types of rules and regulations that you see in Mexico.
But it's okay because the ATF is selling the Mexican drug cartels guns anyway, so
right.
they do have a supplier. It's just not in Mexico.
That's right.
All right. So the echo should be gone now, huh, guys?
The echo is absolutely gone. Thank you, Philip.
Weird. Okay.
All right. So we were talking about rights earlier, and it strikes me one thing that a lot of people tend to think about the Second Amendment as granting the right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't. You can't grant rights. The right to free press, the right to worship as you please, the right to self-preservation, all of those things are inherent to all living things. So a lot of people argue that the Second Amendment is outdated, but all it's doing is stating a natural right, and natural rights don't become outdated at all. We're born with them.
But there are people that want that, want people to believe that. They don't want people to understand. They want to think, again, the government is our daddy, it's our God, whatever you want to call it. And therefore, they're more than, just like when the assault weapon ban passed, the gun control crowd was proud of themselves that they had fooled the American public with the original assault weapon ban into thinking that we were talking about machine guns. And once it had passed, they were snickering and laughing about how the public had been fooled. Well, this is no real different than that. They want people to believe that rights are granted by the government, and therefore the government can withdraw them because they desperately want to withdraw the Bill of Rights if they can do it, because they can't get to where they want to go for free. That's all. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's interesting. I mean, if you actually read the preamble to the Bill of Rights, it even says right at the beginning, it says the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. So, I mean, that tells us right there. Right? When the Constitution was ratified, there were a lot of Americans who said, hey, wait. This is way too open-ended. We want more protection against the government. And the rights that were installed and, enshrined in the Bill of Rights, as you say, Pat, those were pre-existing rights. These were the rights that the founding generation thought were so important that they needed to be outlined specifically as no-go zones against the federal government, this new government that nobody knew whether they could trust, right? This was an entirely new framework. And so rather than just blithely assume, absolutely, rather than just assume, okay, everything's going to be fine, they said, no, you can't infringe on our freedom of speech. You cannot infringe on our freedom of worship. You cannot change these things that we already possess. You cannot try to take these rights away. And the right to keep and bear arms, you're exactly right, was one of those pre-existing rights codified and protected by the Bill of Rights, but it wasn't granted. This isn't about the government granting rights. This is, again, the Bill of Rights says you shall not infringe. It's not your job to infringe upon this right which exists already. How can the government that provides a right infringe on that right? If the government is the one that determines the scope of that right, if the government is the one that determines that right exists at all, well, they can't, by definition, infringe on that right because it's not our right, it's theirs.
And what they did, the founding fathers had lived in Europe and had studied history. And I think what they saw was it's almost like a flow chart where they just knew how government tended to progress. It's like a cancer. It just slowly starts growing and then it expands. And it becomes a power grab. It's a battle between the citizens and the government. Even though they create it, it's like a butler who's now taken over your house. He's no longer your servant, but he decides who gets to eat what, how much they get to eat. It's usually him that gets anything he wants, and is basically taking over. Pretty soon, the owner's sleeping outside the doghouse. That's a progression that they tended to know that it went. And therefore, they tried to put these roadblocks in because they said, okay, what are the worst things or what are the commonalities that these tyrannical governments have? Well, they take away your free speech. You dare not speak against the tyrannical government because you will disappear into the night or be reeducated like they did a lot of that in the Soviet Union. Um, they obviously the right to bear arms. Are you kidding me? Let people have guns? You got to be joking. No way that's going to be in there. And oh yeah, we can't really battle crime if you can not be forced to testify against yourself. We can't do that, and you really don't need a lawyer. We can just have a judge and you decide if you're guilty or not. And you go down the line, and the things that they really protected were the first things that a tyrannical government's going to take away from you, so that it's in total control of you and it can do whatever it wants. And then now you're looking at communist China, kind of a life where the government you can't even travel to another state in China without permission. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think it's Federalist 42, where James Madison talks about how the rights that the American people possess and the freedoms that we possess are so different from what they had in Europe, right? All of those were kingdoms. They were monarchies. The people really didn't have a say. Ultimately, there was, God and king and country, and you were subservient to His Majesty or Her Majesty. And we rejected that form of government, right? We set up this republic, this representative republic, which in itself was a check on tyranny. But Federalist 42 talks about how, listen, I mean, if there ever is a tyrannical federal government, the states have the power to resist. Madison talks a lot about things that look like and sound like Second Amendment sanctuary movements, where, we the people say, okay, you passed that law, now you try to enforce it, right? And then, again, states banding together, office holders and these citizens coming together. But Madison speaks specifically about the right to keep and bear arms. If all else fails, that sort of break glass in case of emergency situation, you've got the people, the body of the people bearing arms, unlike the kingdoms in Europe where the people are not to be trusted with arms. So you're right. When they talk about this right being outdated, if the Second Amendment is outdated, then the First Amendment is outdated. Then the Constitution itself is outdated, and that's exactly what they're talking about.
That's exactly they want it to be that way.
Yeah, right. They think this has all reached its expiration date. That we should tear it all down, and they get to be the ones to build on the ashes, and they're going to build this utopia, this progressive heaven on earth. Right. All we have to do is give up our rights, give up our safety, give up our security, and leave it all up to them to build that brave new world.
Yeah, we can see that world. You could go visit China. You could visit certain places in South America, and you find out real quick how well that works. And by the way, I see 42 Chill put in that the people grant rights to the government. And actually, I know where he's going with that, but just to be clear for everybody, the government has no rights. The government has got zero rights. It's got power. That's what the government has. We have rights. The government has powers. And so we, the people, have allowed the government to have certain powers to basically do things like set a common currency, provide for a common defense overall for the whole country, to cover interstate commerce, things like that. That's why. So it's a very narrow mission originally. And now, man, it's in every aspect of our lives. You want to sell milk that hasn't been properly pasteurized. Oh no, the federal government comes swooping down on you. It's just it's you name it. Everything you could think of anymore has got regulations. That's and we kind of screwed things up somewhere in the past where for example, the way the country was set up, the states were the ones that elected senators to the federal government, because the idea was that the House, your local House, controlled the what the citizens wanted, and the Senate controlled what the states wanted, which is a step above that. So you have this natural tension between the federal government trying to grab power and the state wanting to hold on to its power, and then at the bottom of that, you've got the citizens wanting to keep their rights. But
Right.
for some bizarre reason, we decided to elect the senators by the people too. So now the states don't have that natural tension with the federal government. Now the federal government gives them money. They take the money from us and hands it back to the states as well. We're going to give you all this money. Now we want you to infringe on the rights of the very people that gave us all this money. It's a problem. I really wish we could go back to the way the founding fathers had that originally.
Right. Absolutely. And Steve is saying that the government doesn't give anything without taking it from
Yeah.
someone else. So, and they have to take it from you and I that worked for it to give it to the states or to give it to other people or other countries. So governments don't have money, they don't have property. They can seize it and take control of it, but they're not supposed to own it. We're
Right. They don't
supposed to own
produce
that.
anything. They don't actually
Mhm.
produce something that you would buy in theory. Government's not supposed to do that.
Yeah, and
It,
the whole premise of the Second Amendment was like Greg Trojan is saying. By the way, Greg is an executive member, and I see Mark Ching on here posting.
mhm.
He's also an executive member of VCDL. But Greg commented that people with ARs don't get into cattle cars, and that adage is very, very true. So
Yeah.
that's exactly why the Second Amendment was put in there. And there was to understand the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, you have to go back to before the Revolutionary War and even before this country was settled, and understand the struggles that people were going through having monarchies that could just at a whim take their stuff, take their wife if they wanted, take their daughter and say, I want her for my
Mhm.
concubine or whatever
Oh,
they
well, I
called
think
it.
some of the kings, they got the first shot at a bride before she got married. I mean, it's just
Yeah. And
unbelievable the tyranny.
they could take your property. They could, hunting licenses, by the way, were so that you had permission to hunt the king's deer. And if you
Yeah.
weren't rich enough, or if you didn't own enough land, then you weren't allowed to hunt. And that was a staple of food for a lot of people, especially the people of lower income.
Yeah. You can
So
look at what
these
they look at.
people got on a boat and risked their lives. It was a treacherous trip to come over here on a ship, and a lot of people didn't make it. And they knew this getting on board, but they came over here for the chance to actually own something for themselves and have some freedom and get out from under the oppression of the government that they were subjected to in Europe. And so when England started trying that same oppression to the colonists over here that had gotten a real taste of freedom, they said, oh, hell no.
Mm.
And they really did try to resolve their differences with England. War was an absolute last resort, but it was their only choice in the end. So here we
England was
are.
a superpower at the time. You're going up against a superpower, just a bunch of
Hmm.
colonists. Cam, I also want to talk to you a little bit about shifting gears here a little bit. Give me your take on all these lawsuits that are now flying. I mean, there are so many lawsuits flying around the country. I kind of told our members on some of this stuff, don't, when you hear that they overturned this ban or that ban, or, don't rush and assume that everything's okay. Because this is a game of ping pong. It's like, okay, you can have the right. Oh no, we're going to take it back. Oh no, you can have it. And so, so it's like you're just watching this ball go back and forth. So you just may as well sit back. And once the game is finished, then we can either celebrate or cry. But my take is it's overall it's looking very good on our side. But you really have gone into this stuff. I've watched some of your discussion on it. Kind of share with everybody your thoughts on all these lawsuits.
Sure, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I call this a supercharged moment for the Second Amendment. I think Second Amendment Foundation alone has over 50 cases that they're actively litigating, right? And then you add in Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, National Association of Gun Rights, NRA, and those are just the national groups. At the state level, we've got lawsuits going on as well. In Virginia, in fact, you've got Frazier versus ATF, which is challenging the ban on handguns to under 21. Brown versus ATF, which is a SAF case as well. And you're right. Listen, I will get cautiously optimistic. I mean, I'll cheer a little bit when I see a good decision, even if it's from a U.S. district court judge at the trial level. Yeah. Because those do matter, right? They might not be the last word, but they do matter. When Judge Benitez writes in California about the ban on large capacity magazine being unconstitutional, courts around the country are reading what he has to say, right? And there are other legal challenges to similar laws in Washington State, in Maryland, in Illinois, and so these specific cases have a sort of ripple effect. And I think they also ripple upward, right? I think Judge Benitez, for example, in Duncan versus Bonta, wasn't just writing for the plaintiffs and the defendants. He was writing for the Ninth Circuit judges that are going to hear this case. And he's basically telling them, here's why you cannot overturn me, without completely going against what the Bruen decision had to say. He's writing to the Supreme Court as well. Here's why you need to take this case, because California is so egregiously violating the rights of their citizens. And I've seen some terrible decisions that have come out since Bruen. You had a judge in Connecticut decide that AR-15s aren't protected under the Second Amendment because they are unusually dangerous. You've had judges say that large capacity magazines aren't protected because back in the 1800s, Illinois passed a law against paramilitary groups parading around, and there was a lot of ammo there when you had groups of people parading. So that's kind of like having a 20-round magazine. I mean, you've just seen some just abusive decisions, but you've also seen, I think, some pretty good decisions. And we've seen a lot of mixed bags, right? Maryland, for example, the temporary restraining order that was just granted. The judge there kind of split the baby and didn't grant a restraining order against everything. There were some provisions that I was really surprised that the judge said, yeah, these are okay, like parks, public parks and state parks.
Yeah, right? the Supreme Court's already said those are not sensitive areas.
Yeah.
They've already said that.
Right. But the judge said, well, I found like 5 cities in the 1800s that banned carry in parks. So, yeah, it's fine with me. But did say that the state of Maryland went too far, for example, when they tried to turn every publicly accessible place into a gun-free zone by default, and businesses had to post concealed carry welcome. Right. That just flips what it means to have a right on its face. If we possess this right to bear arms in public in self-defense, then again, presumptively, we possess that right everywhere. There are some places that the Supreme Court says, okay, you can ban it. But the idea that virtually every business out there would all of a sudden become a no-go zone when we, again, have the right to carry in public in general. Even a Biden-appointed judge said, nah, that's a stretch. That's too far. So, Bruen isn't going to be the last word. But it's still being abused, just like we saw Heller abused and McDonald abused. But it's getting harder for them to play the games that they were playing. They can't do this entrance ballasting test where, you have the right to keep and bear arms, but the government, as you say, Phil, they have the power and the responsibility to ensure public safety, so they can pass whatever gun control law they want. They can't do that anymore. Right? No. Now they have to go through this test, the history, text, tradition test. And again, you'll find judges who will just use bad history. They'll find a couple of, outlier ordinances or statutes, and they'll say, all right, that's enough. That's good enough. That law can stand. But
the Supreme Court's already said, hey, you can't do that. We don't take outliers. Even if 3 cities had something out of the whole United States at the time, You can't count that. And again, they're just stretching as far as they can. But they're looking like fools doing this too. Quite frankly, they don't look like somebody that graduated from Yale or something. It's the kind of, they look like they never really went to high school. So at some point, I think a lot, even as you said, even Biden appointed judges or Obama judges, some of them are going to go, no, I'm not. I'm smarter than this, and I can't go along with this.
Yeah. And Bo had asked the question, where do we stand on braces? Is it still legit to have them if you're a member of FPC or GOA? This is one of those cases, Bo, where, like Phil said, things are ping-ponging back and forth, right? So we had an injunction that originally applied to all of the plaintiffs and their customers, and then the Fifth Circuit came back and said, well, okay, it's not going to be that broad, but it will apply to, I think, the companies and their customers. And I did see that FPC... I think FPC said that their members are still covered under this injunction. Again, when these things are in the lower courts and they're ping-ponging back and forth between the district court and then the appellate court above, it gets real confusing, particularly, and we've got, multiple ATF cases, right? So the bump stock cases have sort of moved up to the Supreme Court. They're going to be, I think there are 2 that are going to be heard in conference coming up on the 26th, I believe, of this month. And then you've got the braces, you've got the frame and receiver cases, and those are all still kind of bubbling up in the lower courts. And yeah, it is confusing because the government's losing in most of these courts, particularly the Fifth Circuit. They're losing on the merits. But I think that a lot of the judges are still trying to give at least a little bit of deference to the government in terms of not expanding this to everybody, to every gun owner in the country. And they may also be taking a nod from the Supreme Court. I think it was the Fifth Circuit panel that basically said the Supreme Court told them we can't do that. We have to apply these injunctions as narrowly as we can.
So what do you think of Rahimi? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we can talk about Rahimi. Absolutely. That's going to be a fascinating case.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And tell everybody what that one's about again.
Sure. So Zaki Rahimi is a guy down in Texas who is currently accused of several violent crimes, including a number of shootings, none of which are relevant to this particular case. The case that is before the U.S. Supreme Court involves a domestic violence restraining order that Zaki Rahimi was subject to. He was found with a gun after this domestic violence restraining order had been issued. His public defenders argued that this particular statute is unconstitutional, that, again, under the Bruin test, we didn't disarm people because of civil restraining orders. And we certainly didn't put them in prison as a result of violating those civil restraining orders. So the Fifth Circuit found in favor of Zaki Rahimi that this law is, again, not a longstanding tradition. It's not a part of the historical record, and that it should be overturned. So DOJ appeals this to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court takes this. And this is really the first sort of prohibited persons case that the court has taken, I think in decades, right? In determining who is part of we the people who get to keep and bear arms.
Well, and there's a side effect on this too, though, that when the feds filed their part of it, they didn't say that he apparently had a quote unquote assault rifle, and they didn't say at all that this is unconstitutional. Not only that, or illegal. He had an illegal gun. They didn't do that. They didn't say that his AR, or I believe it was an AR, was illegal. That's actually, believe it or not, that's significant when it comes to law. When you suddenly, basically, in essence, you kind of accepted the fact that it is legal, that it is constitutional. So not because they didn't argue against that with Rahimi. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, but their position is basically it doesn't matter. It could have been a single-shot Derringer, could have been one of those modern battlefield weapons of war. He can't possess anything, right? But not only that, their position is that anybody who is not a law-abiding citizen doesn't have none of them have Second Amendment rights. So if you get pulled over for speeding, are you a law-abiding citizen? If you jaywalk, are you a law-abiding citizen? think of all of the laws. I mean, Bill, you're just talking about this, right? All of the powers that government has assumed and all of the laws that they've put in place as a result. I think there's a book like 5 Felonies a Day. The author says, Americans on average, unknowingly, commit 5 felonies a day because we are just so overlawed and overregulated. And the DOJ's position has no limiting authority, no limiting principle whatsoever. If you're not law-abiding, you don't possess the right to keep and bear arms. And so that's something that a lot of the, not only Rahimi's attorneys, but a lot of the amicus briefs that have come in arguing that the Supreme Court should uphold the Fifth Circuit's decision, that's where a lot of them have focused, right? You're not going to find a lot of people who are singing Zacky Rahimi's praises. He's not exactly the poster child for the Second Amendment. But they're making this about the law in question. They're making it about the statute in question. They're making it about the DOJ's position that any infraction of any law, no matter how minor, places you outside of the scope of your right to keep and bear arms. And honestly, I have no idea what the Supreme Court's going to do. If they adhere to their own test, then I think the statute should be struck down. But I'm a little concerned that the court's going to want to try to find a way to say Zacky Rahimi can't have a gun without completely negating the Bruin decision.
Yeah, you see, there's a very strong theory out there that it's exactly why the U.S. has appealed this up and is willing to battle it out in the Supreme Court. What they wanted to do, and Mark Ching pointed out, you said it, Rahimi is not a poster child of a great guy. He's a bad guy. He's caused a lot of trouble. He's not the kind of person that you feel comfortable walking the streets. I think it was very much intentional that they wanted to focus on somebody like that and say, okay, here's this really bad actor. Now let's make law on that case. So now, the government's kind of back in the corner. They either look like they support this kind of person. It's okay for him to have a gun with all that he's done, or they have to start backing down on what they just ruled in Bruin. I think that's the government's move on the chessboard here.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's reminiscent of Miller. The Miller case, which involved a couple of accused bank robbers whose attorneys, by the way, never showed up to argue on behalf of their clients at the Supreme Court, right? That's one difference, is that Rahimi's public defenders are going to be there. And we've seen public defenders from around the country who've weighed in. We've seen Second Amendment groups from around the country who've weighed in. So this is, we're not going to see the miscarriage of justice that was the Miller decision. We won't see a repeat of that. I can't promise we're going to get a great opinion, but it's not going to be that BS way that Miller was decided back in the 30s. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting, but it's one we definitely need to keep an eye on as that progresses. Again, I think there's a lot of chess moves going on here, and how it's all going to end up, I guess we're going to find out. There's another. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and you may be getting ready to talk about this, but when you talk about the chess pieces on the table, there's another one out there called Range versus Garland, and it's another primitive persons case, but it's one the government doesn't want Brian Range to be faced, because Brian Range is a guy who I think most people would say, yeah, he should be able to own a gun. I think it was 25 years ago he falsified his income on a food stamp application. And at the time in Pennsylvania, that was a misdemeanor offense that was punishable by, I believe, 2 years in prison. And he got probation, didn't spend any time behind bars, but because that crime was punishable by more than a year in jail, Brian Range can't buy a gun. And so he sued to get his rights back. Eventually, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals en banc, with, again, some Biden-appointed judges, some Obama-appointed judges, they said, you know what? This is silly. And under the Bruin test, Brian Range should be able to get his right to keep and bear arms restored. He should be able to purchase a firearm. That is going up to the Supreme Court. I think the petition, the cert petition came in last week, or it's due this week. But that's another one. It's right behind Rahimi, right? But the DOJ was, they were lucky enough, I think, to get Rahimi out ahead of the Range case, because again, this is ultimately asking that question: who comprises we the people? And if Zacky Rahimi is not a part of we the people who can possess firearms, well, what about Brian Range? And the government, DOJ, says no, neither of them. Yeah, by the way, if you are a medical marijuana patient and you own guns, nope, that's illegal too. They're trying to go after concealed carry holders in Arkansas right now. The ATF is.
What about the case? There's another important case that I think's in there. That one about the gun-free school zone. Where was that one located? That was up northwest, wasn't it? Where was it Idaho? No, it wasn't Idaho. Maybe Montana, where a guy lived across the street from a school, and one of his neighbors had threatened him, so he was carrying a gun in his yard or something, and the police decided to prosecute him. This isn't a bad guy. This is not a case the federal government's going to want, because people are going to look at this guy and say, "You're charging him when he was on his own land, but across the street from a school with this 1,000-foot gun-free school zone." So this could be a very interesting case to watch, because I would love it to strike down the whole gun-free school zone act. But if nothing else, it may restrict it and get rid of that stupid 1,000-foot rule. When you leave that in, you can hardly drive anywhere in America.
Yeah,
I think we lost Cam.
Oh, no, he's back.
There he is.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I think my rural satellite internet was crapping out for just a second. So I think I heard most of what you're saying, and I think Theron is right. It is Montana where that case is. Montana. I mean, and that's the thing, right? I mean, every day, or at least multiple times a week, we are seeing these cases, and either lawsuits are being filed, or we're getting oral arguments, or a decision is coming down. But the next 5 years, I think, is going to be just absolutely critical in shaping Second Amendment jurisprudence for decades to come. And that's why, this election here in Virginia is so important. The elections next year across the country are so important, because, it's not just about the next 2 years, the next 4 years. In a lot of respects, it really is about the next 20 years, the next 40 years, and what our rights are going to look like, and frankly, what this country is going to look like going forward.
Bandit 48 said, could they rule, meaning the Supreme Court, against Rahimi and for range without messing with Bruin? I kind of think no, because the whole idea that the defenses in that is going to go tradition and history. Where were we taking away rights for carrying near a school? When did that begin? They're not going to be able. So it's all aimed at the whole concept of that this is not part of our tradition, that this is not how it always was.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, theoretically, I guess they could try, but the problem is when you do that, you open up a whole other can of worms, right? So they could say, for example, well, in Bruin, we talked about how, there aren't going to be modern day analogs to every situation. Some things are going to be new, right? And things that the founders didn't have to deal with in 1791. So maybe domestic violence was one of those things. We could argue, obviously, domestic violence took place back then, but, it was treated differently. So in today's modern world, a civil domestic violence restraining order is not applicable to anything that was in place in 1791. So this is new law, and we can say that Zaki Rahimi and shouldn't be allowed to possess a gun, nor should anybody with a civil domestic violence restraining order. But that says nothing about Bruin.
So
the problem with doing that is all of a sudden that says, well, okay, well, what about red flag laws? Right. And those must be okay. And what about all of these other ways that we can undo people's rights without a conviction or without, due process of law, without even criminal charges being filed? And there's danger there. So I think you're right. I think ultimately there's no way around Bruin without weakening the Bruin decision.
And that's what the feds want. They want it weakened. So it's going to be, again, the gun control side is never going to go away. Those that are in the government, those that are just the billionaires really that are funding most of this, they're not going away. They're just not going away, and neither are we. But we're in a battle. It's a war, and it's going to keep going.
It's like I said in one of the Defender articles, not the last Defender, but the one before it. There will always be people trying to take our rights away from us, trying to deny us of our rights. And there always have been throughout history. There always will be. So the fight is never over. You can never let your guard down. And rights are something that are important enough that they're worth fighting for. So,
absolutely.
It's important to remember too with this Rahimi case, the loss of rights for a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor is by definition a less significant. It's not a violent crime. It's not a felony. It's way lower on the totem pole. So
Minor
you
crime.
it's minor. You should never lose your rights for a minor infraction. And
even
the
if you
red
do, you
flag
should be able to get them
laws,
back.
the red flag laws, you haven't even broken a law yet. You haven't done anything. Somebody just said they thought you were going to. So, are we going to allow thought police? I mean, is this
Some people want
1984?
them.
Not the
Right.
book, not the year.
Well, and I mean, listen, when we're talking specifically about domestic violence restraining orders, obviously nobody wants to minimize domestic violence, but these are things that, when a couple's going through a messy divorce, for example, it is not uncommon for both spouses to be hit with a domestic violence restraining order. You've got allegations on both sides. And so the judge says, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and figure this out. You guys are both under a restraining order.
And you have,
there are going to be a lot of people who, as you say, I mean, the bar is so low, in getting one of these things, and yet it is a lifetime prohibition if you possess a firearm afterwards.
you have courts and lawyers that mess up too. I had a young man that came into my store to buy a gun and got the phone call from the state police saying, is he still there? Can you keep him there? And what had happened, they were on their way to arrest him, but what had happened was that he had recently separated from his wife and gotten custody of their less than a year old child. And there was a restraining order against the wife so that she couldn't have the child. I don't know what the circumstances were, but when it got filed against both of them instead of one of them, and it was a mistake. So he almost ended up in jail if it wasn't for VCDL board member John Pierce, who I gave the card to the young man real quick, and I said, call him. And they talked it out, and John called the state police, and the guy wasn't arrested, and the kid didn't end up in social services. So crisis averted, but it could have been a very bad day for that kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. Yeah, kudos to John, too. He's a damn good lawyer.
Kudos to you, though, Pat, for, putting that card in his hand.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I couldn't let him go to jail and his baby go to social services, not in good conscience. So
yeah.
But so many times something like that happens, and almost every single time that I've had a denial, it's been either overturned on appeal or something was wrong with it. There was only once that it was justified, and even that was a mistake because it was something that would have expired in a couple of months, and the guy was just a little bit early buying the gun. So, go figure.
Hey, Cam, I hate to keep you on, too. I thought you might have to leave early, or are you good?
I've got about 3 minutes or so left. I do apologize. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting ready to be on Mark Walters' Monstercast here in just a couple of minutes. But I do want to say, I do want to say something in response to what Pat said earlier. And Pat, you're right that the gun control movement isn't going to go away. I mean, it's not. It is so deep funded. It is. It is so entrenched within the Democratic Party. It's not going to go away. But what we can do, I think what we need to be doing is marginalizing the movement. And this is something that I talked about at AmCon a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix. I live outside of Farmville, Virginia, and I didn't realize this until I moved here, but Farmville, Prince Edward County, actually made up the bulk of the cases in what became Brown versus Board of Education in the 1950s. A student named Barbara Johns walked out and led her classmates on a walkout of the black high school over the conditions there. And they ended up suing. And when Brown versus Board of Education came down, Prince Edward County didn't say, okay, we'll integrate. They said, hell no, we're shutting down the schools rather than let white kids go to school with black kids. And they shut down the public schools for 5 years. They tried to fund private schools instead for the white kids. I spoke not long after I moved to Farmville to a black gentleman in his 60s who talked about going to school in a church basement for 5 years. His dad was one of the teachers there. He had been a public school teacher, but was told he could stick around as the janitor and said, no, that's okay. I'm going to educate my kid. It took 11 years after Brown versus Board of Education for these schools in Prince Edward County to reopen under integration. But the segregationists in Prince Edward County lost. Right? They lost big time. They would be so upset at what they see today if they were to go to Walmart in Farmville, if they were to walk around downtown, because, not only do you have black and white kids going to school together, you've got friendships, you've got marriages, you've got kids. It's their worst nightmare. And the bigotry that was in power in Prince Edward County in the 1950s and 60s has been marginalized. And we need to do that today with the gun control crowd. We need to marginalize their positions so they cannot deprive single moms in bad neighborhoods from being able to protect themselves and their babies. We need to marginalize them so that, senior citizens don't have to be defenseless when they walk down the street. So that all of our right to keep and bear arms can be exercised the way that the founders intended, the way that our forefathers were able to do so, and the way that we continue to need to be able to do so in order to, again, provide that security necessary for a free state. And I think we can do it.
I tell people all the time, gun owners today are being treated like African Americans were being treated back then. And we have been victimized by bigotry in the same way that the Native Americans, the African Americans, the Asians that were over here, it's the same thing. We've been made sort of a scapegoat, and it's just a prejudice.
It is a prejudice. I would say, thankfully, we don't have to deal with the fire hoses. We don't have to deal with the police dogs when we, go sit down at lunch, even in a place that is, got no carry allowed signs.
Right now.
But again, this is why it's so important to stand up now, right? And to be active now and to be engaged now, because the price that we might pay, neighbors talking, neighbors gossiping. I was talking with a friend of mine in Massachusetts who said, it's so hard to get gun owners to put out yard signs to object to what was 4420. Now it's been refiled under a number name. They said they don't want their neighbors to know that they're gun owners. They don't want their neighbors to know they're Second Amendment advocates. Again, if we can't stand up to a nosy neighbor and, in a snarky comment or two, I'm sorry, you're not an activist. You might be a gun owner at that point. You might care about your Second Amendment rights, but you're not willing to stand up and fight even just a little bit. That's not putting yourself out very much, considering what civil rights activists have had to go through in our nation's history. We should be able to put up with a couple of snide remarks. We should be able to put up with a couple of eye rolls. We should be able to put up with being called amosexuals or whatever the labels the prohibitionists want to call us, because we're on the right side, not only of the Constitution, but of history. And this is a fight that is worth having.
And so many times gun owners, they just want their privacy, or they don't want to have to deal with the reactions of people.
Just leave us alone.
Or I don't want to be on a list. I hear that so frequently. I don't want to be on a list. And, frankly, we need to borrow a term, we need to come out of the closet. We need to be, as Bandit 848 said, we need to be loud and proud and show America that gun owners are mainstream. We're normal people. We've been among them all of this time, and nothing bad has happened. As a matter of fact, a lot of good things have happened because armed people good armed people were there.
Yeah, when we go in the closet, we're doing exactly what they want us to do. They want us to go in that closet and lock the door and just stay in there. If we stand up to that, we're shoving it right back and saying, "No, we're not in the. You go in the closet. You're the one that wants to take my rights. You should be hiding your face from everybody else." Cam, I know
That's
you
right.
got to run.
I do, unfortunately.
Tell Mark hello for me, and we should have Mark on this show too.
Absolutely, I certainly will. And thank you so much for the invite. It was great seeing everybody, and I hope that I get a chance to come back and do this again soon.
Yeah, you got a lot of
Absolutely.
comments pouring in. You got a lot of people thanking you for showing up. You're a popular guy.
Thank you guys, and I hope, Greg Trojan, I get to see you here soon in person. So I'll talk to you guys very soon. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Cam.
All right. Have a good night, Cam.
Thanks, you too.
All right. Next up on the agenda, Al, do you want to talk about this picture here? Is your sound on, Al?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't see the picture.
The picture. Look on
the picture is you
on,
and
on
Philip.
the live.
Yeah, that you and Philip standing next to that beast at the meeting at XCal when I brought it up there, the 50 caliber.
Yes. So in support of the Academy, we do have a raffle going on right now where the grand prize is that Zastava 50 caliber rifle that you see there with me and Philip. How we have 1,500 raffle tickets right now that are available. Actually, I don't. That's not correct.
Well, we probably have 1,400 now.
Yeah, we sold a good bit of them at the expo. So do we have we're able to also purchase them online, are we, Pat?
No, there are no online sales because our website cannot limit it to debit cards and e-checks. So the law says you can't finance your gambling habit. So you can use debit cards, checks, and cash and money orders to pay for the raffle tickets. So because of that, we did not do online sales. They will be for sale at most of the gun shows and events that VCDL will have booths at between now and November 16th at the drawing. We'll have tickets for sale at the meeting at XCal, which is a week from Thursday. There were tickets.
They sold a bunch of. Yeah, they sold a bunch of tickets at Green Top just this weekend too.
Yeah, they sold a bunch of tickets at Green Top this weekend. I got a message from Bob Schmidt, who's the president, I think, at the Ravenna Rifle and Pistol Club, and he's going to get some tickets from me to have at the RRPC meeting on Thursday. So if you're a Ravenna Rifle and Pistol Club member, or if you're joining the club, you can go to that meeting and get tickets. So I know he'll have at least 25. There are other gun shows that they will be sold at, and I think there should be, if you go to vcdl.org/page/events, I think it comes up. You can see what's coming up soon. Let me look at. Anyway, those are all the prizes that you will see on the screen there.
Yep, it's more than just the 50 caliber.
Right, there's 5 prizes, and there's 1,500 tickets total. So you have a 1 in 300 chance of winning a gun. And the least expensive gun is worth over $600. So there's I'm going to put the link in the chat here. Hang on. There we go. There's the link to the calendar on the VCDL page. We have a show coming up at they'll be at Gill Manor Farm on October 14th and 15th, and he'll have tickets there. There's a Virginia Beach gun show that same weekend. Thursday the 19th in Ashburn, we have the VCDL in-person meeting. Again at Gill Manor Farm on October 21st. He'll have tickets there. I'm not sure if Brandy will have tickets at the bowling pin shoot in Louisa, but if I can catch up with her, she probably will.
Well, if not, I'll bring some. I'll probably be at that match, so I can bring some tickets to that.
Salem Gun Show on October 21st and 22nd. And I think I've already sent Nat some tickets for that. Harrisonburg Gun Show, and I have not heard from that coordinator. Fredericksburg Gun Show on October 28th and 29th. And then the Richmond Gun Show on November 11th and 12th. So that's what's going on between now and the drawing. You don't have to be present to win. You do have to be eligible to buy a gun in order to buy a ticket. You have to be 18 or older. If you win one of the handguns, we'll substitute a long gun if you are 18, 19, or 20 years old. Or if you win the AR pistol, we will convert it to a rifle. So,
somebody's asking about mailing a check in. Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah, so you can contact me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It's pat.webb@vcdl.org. Email me for details. If you want to use a debit card over the phone or mail in a check, then we'll work something out. So I expect these will probably be sold out in a week to 2 weeks, as fast as they're selling. I spent all day Friday answering emails about raffle tickets within minutes of that email coming out. So yeah, it's been quite popular, which we expected it to be. So, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about, let me see if everybody is in this, was the pocket knives. And I'm just going to flip to this. Philip and I will be in this. But these are the VCDL switchblades, and you can still pre-order them. We got the first batch back from the engravers. There's about 35. So the first 35 people that ordered, I'm boxing yours up or getting them ready to go to the XCal meeting next week. I have 100 on back order. And we ordered so many knives that SOG had to order more scales for the knives. So they are on back order. And as soon as we get those, they'll be getting engraved and shipping them out, but you can still order them online. The link is on our homepage, vcdl.org, under the link for the raffle details. And it does say out of stock. That's because it's a pre-order. They are actually out of stock, and it's a special order. So just go ahead and put the back order in, and you'll be on the list. They will go out in the order that we receive your order. And yes, Craig, switchblades are legal in Virginia now, but we cannot ship them across state lines. That's a federal law. There's actually a lawsuit fighting that, but until it's overturned, we can't ship across state lines. So if you're in another state, if you have somebody in Virginia that you can ship the knife to, you can order one. But we can't ship to Maryland, or even if it's legal in that state, we cannot ship across state lines. It's legal to send the knife if you're just gifting it to somebody, but it's not legal as interstate commerce. And so if you buy it, it has to ship into Virginia.
So the federal government must have watched. Yeah, federal government watched West Side Story in the 50s, I guess. Did I? Can't
Yep.
shift switchblades.
So the gun raffle is to raise money for the VCDL Academy. Al, do you want to talk a little bit about that program?
Yeah, most definitely. So the VCDL Academy is the youth outreach program for the VCDL. We're focused on right now. We're generally focused on high school and college, but it's really open for anybody who's trying to learn. We focus on trying to get people to be comfortable around firearms. For example, you know, a lot of people who would end up voting for or not having the Second Amendment as a high priority for them have really never shot a gun before, or maybe have not even been, doesn't even know anybody who has shot a gun. We're trying to prevent that from happening. So if we, so we're basically setting up like range days, um, gun safety courses, as well as civics courses as well, because kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the Constitution being the foundation of our country is extremely important. We're not seeing the young people coming up, the next generation, really understanding the rights that we have, not just the Second Amendment, but really, all the Bill of Rights, all of the amendments after the Bill of Rights and the Constitution itself. Um, if we don't understand as a country how our country is supposed to work, especially because we are a country of ideals, rather than, in other countries, just like what you were saying earlier about like the monarchies and stuff like that, you know, England being like an English country, right? Or France being a French country, we're an American country, but that's not like, it's not an ethnicity, right? It's what binds us is our ideals, is the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the things that's why we have founding fathers, whereas other countries have, the first
Hmm.
king that conquered whatever, area that we're talking about. So, but a lot of people nowadays don't understand that history and don't understand, what how the Constitution actually functions on a basis level. And then, going further, how, like, what the Second Amendment is actually saying, like, why out of everything did the colonists decide, hey, we need to specifically enumerate why we need the right to bear arms. Well, it's because literally the government at that time was taking their guns away. You look at some of the other amendments and it's, you know we couldn't think about taking them away nowadays if the government was really going to quarter somebody in your house. So now your house is the property of the Department of Defense. It's like, we wouldn't think about these things now, but that's what was actually happening, and it can happen again, but it won't as long as we actually revere the Constitution and the Second Amendment specifically. And so those are the kind of things that we're really trying to impart upon people who join the academy. But like I said, as before, as well as actually getting the guns in their hands, having them shoot, because the biggest thing to convert somebody from being a anti-gunner or maybe even neutral on the issue is to shoot themselves.
Right. And so 42 Chilled says they won't learn it in schools. And no, they don't teach the real history in schools. And so that's why the VCDL Academy program is so important. What we want to do is enlighten our young adults and older teenagers on the importance of our freedoms and how the Second Amendment was put there in order to protect the freedoms that our founding fathers were willing to give up their lives for. So, um, the way to do that is to teach them the firearm safety, to teach them how to shoot, and to teach them about the history of the Second Amendment and how it is still relevant today. They're taught that it's a collective right, not an individual right, and they're taught that they're taught that it's outdated and we need to repeal it. So the only way to really protect our rights moving forward is to educate the next generation that's here to protect them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that in communist China, the first thing they did was, one of the first things they did to people when they took over was destroy their history.
That's by taking over the schools.
Yeah, and that's what's going on now. We're not teaching about America's history. That's part of rewriting it. And the Second Amendment's in that. So, I mean, it's very much all pointing in one direction, all the things that we see going on.
And if we want to promote firearm safety, the best way to do that is to teach firearm safety and marksmanship. If you have swimming pools in your neighborhood, which everybody does, you teach your kids how to swim so they don't drown. You teach your kids how to drive so they don't get in an accident. You teach them about cars and traffic and so forth so that they don't get hit by a car crossing the street. You don't say never cross the street. That's unrealistic. It's also unrealistic to think that they will never ever be exposed to a firearm or whatever weapon is in current use at whatever century we're in. So to keep them safe, you have to teach them how to be safe with that tool.
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. And of course, again, there are those that don't want that to happen. They want to pretend the tool isn't there and hoping a future generation will go, I've never seen a gun, and then not care when the right's taken away. It's really pretty insidious. It really is.
Yep, and if you go back way up in the chat, Greg Trojan made the comment that people with ARs don't get on boxcars, and that's exactly why we need to educate our next generation about the importance of the Second Amendment.
Hey, I got a question, Pat. Speaking about the academy, have you shown the wristbands that we had done for the academy? Bruce is probably getting them now.
Here, I've got a.
Let me make you big here, Al. Let me make you big, Al.
And Bruce has got one as well that he can put up to the camera.
Yep.
It's a little too high for me.
Spin it around there, Al.
Yeah.
So it's got the here, let me take it off here.
Shall not be infringed, and the VCDL logo
and the website.
And if you order a bunch of them, we'll put them in a Ziploc for you.
Yeah, we figure that these would be very popular with younger people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We got two sizes, right, Bruce?
We got two sizes, the 7-inch and the 8-inch. We'd do some artwork mods on the fly, some placement mods on the fly. So the 8-inch and the 7-inch have some slight differences, but an adult would be an 8-inch. I mean, my arms are not really large, but the 8-inch is just a little, I wouldn't call it snug, but it does fit well. 7-inch would probably grip pretty tight.
What are you wearing, Al?
This is probably the.
Hold it up and let me see where it says VCDL.org. If there's a space, that's a 7-inch. If there's a space, it's an 8-inch.
Yeah, the 7-inch is rolling around on his arm. Yeah.
So that would be the 7-inch then, right?
Yeah, you got the 7-inch. Well, I'll have to bring a few to the meeting so we can, if anybody's interested in that, they can try the different size, see which one they like.
Hold that thought.
Okay. Holding that thought.
Yep, I might actually have to wear a bracelet.
Yes. Somebody had given me one of those a while back. This one was given to me. It's like a show reel. Protect our Second Amendment. Vote, vote, vote.
So Abel wants a
yeah.
9-inch. They stretch, Abel. So I think the 8-inch will probably work for you.
Must be one of these guys with the big Popeye arms and muscles.
Yep. Yeah, these are. Angela was saying we're going to break her bank, but
Not with these.
the wristbands are pretty inexpensive. So they are inexpensive enough that you can buy some and pass them out. What are they selling for, Bruce?
I don't know. You guys haven't discussed it with me yet, but we'll put them in the store as soon as we discuss it. So probably sometime this week.
Yeah, well, it'll be a good enough price. You'll be able to buy quite easily.
So
Point if we want the message out.
Chris is saying students will be expelled from school for wearing one of those radical, disruptive, violent wristbands. Yeah, just don't make a finger gun and you'll be okay.
Oh my God, was that loaded, Pat? YouTube's going to take you off the air.
I wonder if they're more dangerous if you have fingernail polish on.
No, it's just, you have to have your different colored guns,
I would answer Chris,
like flesh tone.
one of the temporary tattoos and just put it on the kids and send them to school with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, if you look at Philip's background, the black ring Guns Save Lives we have in temporary tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see Angela Akers is on here. She's got a constitutional group that meets down in Christiansburg. And Angela, you want to put the link to that in the chat? You're welcome to do that.
She also said something about needing one of you to speak, and I don't know if she meant Al or you, Pat, or both.
Well, I've spoken down there, and so has Philip, so she might have meant Al, but she knows how to get a hold of us.
Definitely. I look forward to meeting you in person, and I'll definitely 100% willing to speak.
So, Bruce, Craig is asking, would the gun cleaning mat make a good mouse pad? I think you have mouse pads, right?
So, yeah, well, I have both. Let me tell you a quick story on that. So we had mouse pads, 8-inch mouse pads, and some guy came by the table at one of the gun shows I was working. He said, "What's that, a mouse pad?" And me and my smart aleckiness, I said, "Oh, no, that's a gun pad." And he said, "Well, what's a gun pad?" I said, "Well, you get home at night, you don't want to take your gun off, put it on the furniture and piss off mama. So you put it on the gun pad." And the guy said, "Wow, what a great idea." And he bought 2 of them. So I called the vendor and I said, "Can you call the manufacturer and see how these things react to gun solvents and oils?" He called me back 10 minutes later and said, "This is the company that makes the cleaning pads for Car and Glock. So when you get the gun cleaning pads, they're really just big mouse pads." And the simple answer to your question is yes, because that's what I use at work.
So it does double duty, right? You can put your gun on it or put your mouse on it, or both.
I actually have one in the console of my car, so when I pass a true believer, I can just hold it up to the window.
Yeah.
So, Bandit, you said that's a silencer. I guess you were talking about the nail polish would be like a silencer.
No, just Cerakote.
Yeah, that'd be Cerakote.
Yep.
I thought about getting a silencer out of my safe and putting it on my finger.
Actually, there was a couple of guys I knew that liked to shoot suppressed, and after they got done shooting, they went to a theater, and the big ad came up for silencing your phone. So one of the guys reached in one pocket, pulls out his cell phone, and reaches in the other, and he pulls out the can, and he started screwing it on the cell phone like that. So, the insanity of our society.
Yeah, well, laughing is how we keep our sanity. All right, we got anything else, Pat?
The PAC endorsements came out. Second round of PAC endorsements. And Chris, I'm going to put the link to the VCDL store in the chat for you. You can get the mouse pads and or gun pads in the store.
Yeah, and there's going to be a third round. There's going to be a third round of PAC endorsements too coming out next
Yeah,
week.
so the first and second rounds have been out. The first round was General Assembly endorsements. There will be a couple more General Assembly endorsements, I think, because some people were late getting their surveys in. The next round was local races, and there will be another round of both General Assembly and local races coming out probably towards the end of next week. There are still people submitting their surveys. We tried to get them in um, before the early voting started. Um, So that's why they're coming out in stages like this. This early voting is a pain in the butt, but it's what we have to live with right now. So the fact is that if you can, it's a good idea to go down to your registrar's office and vote early in person. And the reason we say this is because you don't want somebody requesting a mail-in ballot under your name and sending it in, and then you go to the polls in November and go to vote, and they say, "I'm sorry, you've already voted," and that has happened. I don't know if it's happened in Virginia, but it has happened. So,
well, we're not going to get our agenda done unless people vote. That's the bottom line. You want to get rid of local gun control? We got everything lined up. If we can get the Senate and the House together, we can do it. So I'm tired of it. I know you guys are.
So, Chris was saying he lives in Arlington. Was there any endorsements? Go to the website, hit the PAC page, and see the link for the endorsements. Something else that I was going to say, and it just flew right out of my head. But it'll come to me
Pat,
again.
You can always stump for if you live in a place where there's nobody that's pro-gun, then go to a place where they are pro-gun and stump for them.
So it's pro-rights. Part of the problem is that the people that are trying to steal our rights are controlling the language. And in order for us to change public opinion, which is what we need to do, we have to control the narrative as well and call it what it is. It's rights. It's not guns. It's our rights. It's our right to self-preservation, our right to self-defense, our right to freedom. And you cannot guarantee your freedom if you don't have the tools to do that. And that's what the Second Amendment is about. So, it's pro-rights and anti-rights. The people that are trying to pass this legislation to ban things, they are anti-rights.
Yeah, and people understand rights in general, perhaps. They may not necessarily know much about guns, but they do understand the importance of rights generally. It's just we have to educate them that one right is so important. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so I think that's all I had. And as soon as we sign off, whatever I was going to say is probably going to pop right back into my head.
Of course it is. It's waiting. It's waiting for you to sign off before it comes forward.
Anyway,
yeah, so that next in-person meeting is a week from Thursday, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a week from this Thursday, if you're in Northern Virginia, come to the meeting at XCal, and you'll get to see the guns that are in the raffle. You can play with the new switchblades, and you can pick up one of the wristbands.
A wristband and a raffle ticket. Bring money. Raffle tickets are $50 a piece. Top prize is worth $9,000. Well, $89.99.99. So a penny under $9,000. And all of the other prizes are worth $600 to $700. So 1 in 300 chance of winning something in the raffle. Pretty darn good odds.
Pat, I would
So
correct you on one thing. The raffle tickets are not $50. They're $50 or more. It's for the Academy.
yes, you're welcome to make contributions. And if you want to support, that's what it was I was going to say. If you want to support this program, it's very, very important that we reach the next generation of rights activists and help them become effective activists. So you can go online and donate to the VCDL Academy. Just hit that donate button and select the Academy when you do it. So vcdl.org/donate is where you go.
Pat, if they mail in a check, do they make it out to VCDL Academy or VCDL and just put Academy donation in the comment?
Make it out to VCDL and put Academy in the comments. So, do you guys have anything else other than saying goodnight?
No. I think for now things are changing a lot. So anything I've got important will come out in an alert this week.
Yeah, it's been quite hectic with rights and lawsuits and everything.
Oh, it's just amazing.
Yep,
Trying to
we live
keep
in
track of it
exciting
all.
times.
Well,
Oh,
things are moving up.
yeah, so it was talked about earlier in the comments. People were saying how 2020 was so important, and somebody else was saying 2020 or how 2024 was so important, and somebody else said 2023 is, and that's absolutely true. The elections in 2023, the entire General Assembly is up for grabs, and there's a lot of sheriff's races and clerks of the court races and everything. So absolutely educate yourself on the people that are running and make sure to vote and make sure that all of your pro rights friends get to the polls and vote. Don't let them sit by and say, well, voting doesn't matter, because
Oh,
if we don't show up, we're going to see another session like we did in 2020.
yeah. If we show
So
up, we won't.
that's right.
Yeah. For those that think it's rigged, then how did the elections turn out the way they did in 2021? So yeah, not true. I mean, even if they try, if we all turn out and vote, we're good. There'd be too many people voting. You
If
can't really
if gun
muck that up.
owners in this state would get off their butts and vote instead of sit at home and just let it go, we could rule the state. We could get rid of all the gun control in one, maybe 2 sessions, and we'd be done. But the
Yeah,
gun owners have to vote. Get your
they
people to
do.
vote. You vote. No excuses. Get off your butt and go vote early if you can.
Okay.
So Bandit says he's got it on good authority. I don't know what the good authority is, but he says if we flip the Senate, we can get constitutional carry.
I
So
believe that's possible.
we have to flip the Senate and hold the House. And it's a shame we weren't at least in the first half of states that did constitutional carry, but we will get there. And if we can get the right General Assembly, we have a governor in office that's going to sign the bills. So get out the vote, people. That's your mission.
It is.
All right, guys. Thank you all for showing up. Remember to click all the YouTube and Facebook buttons and share this with your friends.
And as soon as we go offline, Pat, I got a couple of things I want to discuss with you guys while you're all in the same spot.
All right.